I'll recite the Refuge and Bodhicitta prayer Tibetan, which we don't usually do, but since we're studying Refuge today. Sangye chodang soki chodang wa jangzhe bade dali kyabzhe shi dagi jinzo ge pe tsona dola penje sangye drupa shu sangye chodang soki chodang jangzhe bade dali kyabzhe shi dagi chene ge pe tsona dola penje sangye drupa shu sangye chodang soki chodang Janchu body dani kyabzu chi dagi choge jige sonamki dola penje sange drupa sho. So what that means roughly is I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the sublime community by practicing generosity, or in this case by listening to Dharma, or engaging in Dharma practice, and the other perfections, other practices. May I quickly become enlightened in order to benefit all sentient beings. So first, at the beginning of the session, let's generate positive motivation. So, well, welcome back to everyone first, I should say. Hello. It's good to be with you all again. Good to see everyone again. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to doing this module on refuge together. But yeah, before we say more at the outset, let's just think about why we're here. Yeah, and generate a positive motivation, especially remembering our own aspirations for, to be free from different problems, difficulties that we have. And also think about those who are close to us, our family and friends we naturally care about. And then even those whom we have most difficulty caring about, we tend to dislike, antagonists. And then all the other sentient beings, all the other human beings, animals, and whatever other kinds of sentient beings exist who are the same as us, in wishing to be free from suffering and wishing to have happiness, well-being. So thinking about our interconnection with all of them, and one's own highest aims, and just take a moment to generate a positive motivation, relating that all to this session. So seems like such a long time since I've been with you all here. Because last time I think I did the module on emptiness, no? And I was in Italy that time. So I was in a completely different part of the world. And then now I'm back in Sarah in India. I've been back here about 3 months. But just a couple of weeks ago, I went to Singapore for 3 weeks to attend teachings by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Singapore, which was really nice. So I just got back to Sarah like a little over a week ago. Maybe it's been about 2 weeks now. But Lama Zopa Rinpoche just came to Sarah actually yesterday to attend teachings here in Bailakupe for a few weeks. I haven't seen him yet, but heard he's arrived. And I think what Venerable Namjung did the module on samsara last,
And Nirvana.
right?
Yeah.
And Nirvana,
Yes.
samsara and Nirvana, yeah. Okay, great. And then I had a month break, summer break. So welcome back to everyone. So I think this is the 7th module in this course, right? The way we're doing it, I believe. Anyway, we're about halfway through now. So this module on the refuge and the 3 jewels is the module name, refuge and the 3 jewels. So yeah, I was thinking, I think this is one of the things I teach the least, and I'm kind of maybe one of the things I'm a little less comfortable teaching, because it really falls within like the more religious part of Buddhism. So, usually His Holiness says of all the different Buddhist teachings and practices, we can generally divide up into those that are more to do with philosophy, the philosophical view, like the things like about emptiness, which I did the last module on, and dependent arising, emptiness, how all things are permanent. So there's a philosophical view side of Buddhism, and then there's the psychology, which is about all the afflictive emotions, how to transform the mind. And then there's more like the religious side, different rituals and practices. So like the philosophical and the psychology side are easily adaptable to anyone, no matter what religion they practice, whether they're religious or non-religious, can be easily adapted to a sectarian, secular setting. But the religious aspects are more for like those who are Buddhist, or those who are interested in that aspect of Buddhism. So refuge isn't, refuge and the three jewels, it isn't purely religious. There's a lot of philosophy and some psychology involved, but it is more like, essentially it's kind of like, well, what does it mean actually to be a Buddhist, right? So another reason I don't talk about it so much is, well, usually when I'm teaching, often I'm teaching in a secular setting for people who from all different, different schools of belief, some religious, some non-religious, and so forth. And so, like how to meditate, I just did that yesterday at India University, give introduction to meditation. So those kind of things is easily adaptable. But the refuge and the qualities of the three jewels, it's more like for people who are quite interested in Buddhism. So in this context of discovering Buddhism, this introduction to Buddhism course, of course, from the outset, we've been very clear. The course is not for the purpose of converting anyone to be Buddhist, right? It's more just for the purpose of informing people about what is Buddhism, what does the Buddha teach. So I want to just make that clear again, especially at the outset of this. Like, I'm not teaching about refuge in the three jewels because for the purpose of everybody going for refuge, with the intention that all of you go for refuge at the end of this module or something like that. But more for the purpose of understanding, well, for someone who really does decide that they want to make their Buddhist practice an integral part of their life, that they want to commit to that path, this is kind of what is involved in clarifying that for oneself, and then actually, because going for refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha is really the mark of whether one's a Buddhist or not, right? Basically, what distinguishes a person who's Buddhist from one who's not Buddhist but interested in Buddhism, or not interested in Buddhism, whatever. So basically, it's whether they go for refuge to the Buddha Dharma Sangha or not, right? If you go for refuge to the Buddha Dharma Sangha, it means you're a Buddhist. So, a lot of discourses talk about, well, what does that mean to go for refuge to the Buddha Dharma Sangha? If you don't go for refuge to Buddha Dharma Sangha, then you can still study Buddhism, come to Buddhist teachings, do different, meditation practices, do different prayers. You can draw on, use Buddhism as a resource and draw on all the things it has to offer and use that in your own life in whatever way you want. But that doesn't make you a Buddhist, So it just means you're kind of using Buddhism, which is fine. So yeah. So, and I guess another reason, I guess these are all the reasons I'm uncomfortable teaching this module. This is the first topic. Another reason is because I know I grew up in a Roman Catholic family. I went to church till I was like, graduated from high school, and went to Sunday school, and I was, probably the most annoying student in the class in Sunday school, asking so many challenging questions to the teachers. And then, ultimately I decided to give up that, that kind of belief system, or became agnostic for a while, and then gradually became Buddhist. So I guess another reason I'm uncomfortable teaching this module, not so much my personal story, that I'm totally comfortable with, but because I think for many of us from a Christian background, or as Americans, we live in a very, our whole society is very influenced by a Christian kind of worldview. then because I know in the Christian context, I mean, I know from going to Sunday school, like oftentimes questions challenging the authenticity or the ability or the well, statements about like God and Jesus and stuff that you find difficult to believe, then they're not welcome, right? Questions about that are not so welcome, right? It's more that there's a sort of expectation that whatever is taught about, you know, the supremacy or the qualities or the power, ability of, you know, the Holy Trinity in the case of Catholicism, that's unquestioned. You know, that should be taken at face value and believed just because it's the word of God or it says so in the Bible, or you know, that's what the Pope says or whatever. So so then I guess I have the hesitation that people from a Christian worldview, when you talk about the qualities of the Buddha Dharma Sangha, or you know, especially the Buddha Dharma Sangha, that they're going to have the same assumption that you're expecting them to believe that and just take it on, you know, unquestioningly. Whereas that's totally not the case. I mean, just like with everything else we've taught in the course, you're welcome to question, and you should question and challenge like any statements made whatsoever, right? Whether about the Buddha Dharma Sangha. So it's not like the Buddha Dharma Sangha, because they're our object of refuge, then, you know, if anyone challenges statements made about them, we're going to get upset and angry and resentful and stuff like that. So yeah, so when we talk about the qualities of the Buddha Dharma Sangha, it's not done so with the assumption that you're going to believe that and also have the same kind of faith or respect or trust in them that, you know, I do as a Buddhist. So yeah, so that also should be clear. Okay, so having said that, then I feel much more comfortable to talk about everything else. Okay, so let me I'll just, yeah, I want to just go through the, okay, I need the screen sharing, of course, because yeah, I have some outlines. I want to go through just the main points, just tell you the main points that we're going to cover in this module. And then, yeah, start talking about them and other things that comes to mind. So I'll just go to, I think I'm not sure you all have this list. This is just from the required topics. Okay, hold on, I should expand this. This is from the FPMT, the list of topics that are supposed to be covered from the FPMT kind of review of this, or summary of this module. So the reasons for going for refuge is one. And then, so we're going to have 4 sessions. This is the first of 4 teaching sessions. And then we'll have probably, I don't know, at least 2 meditation sessions. So it'll probably be about 6 sessions total. Okay, so in the 4 teaching sessions, we're supposed to cover these, I don't know how many points. The reasons for going for refuge, so why go for refuge? And well, I'll talk also as what is refuge? What does it mean to go for refuge? And then valid refuge objects, which is the Buddha Dharma Sangha, but why are they valid refuge objects? Then the qualities of the 3 jewels. So 3 jewels means Buddha Dharma Sangha. And then the measure of having gone for refuge. Then the causal and resultant refuge. The benefits of having gone for refuge. Refuge commitments. So it means if you go for refuge, what are the things you're supposed to abandon and the things you're supposed to commit to doing for the rest of your life. And then what are the 5 lay vows? So for lay people, these are vows that they can take on the basis of taking refuge. And then introduction to the refuge preliminary practices. Okay, so those are the main topics we'll go through. So today I'll probably just talk a little bit generally about refuge, and then reasons, well, what refuge actually is, and then maybe reasons for going for refuge, and maybe we'll get to the valid refuge objects, or why are the Buddha Dhamma Sangha valid refuge objects. So yeah, I'll come back to my outline, but for now I don't need to share the screen more. So, and I hope you'll have a lot of questions. Yeah, maybe at the outset today. So let's see. So I think today I'll speak for about, till the end of the hour, and then we'll do some meditation and we'll have some question and answer session. Actually, maybe I'll just speak for like 45 minutes, first 45 minutes. Then we'll have some meditation and then discussion. Then the question and answer, and then we'll have discussion groups, right? And then at the end, we'll maybe have some more question and answer. So think of questions, as I'm talking. Generally about refuge. So in the Lam Rim, right? So this whole course is based on the Lam Rim, but we're doing things all out of order. So in the required readings, one of the main required readings for each module, in addition to that PDF required reading packet, is also the Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. So usually when I'm preparing for a module, I go to Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand first, because that's really the canonical Lam Rim for introductory level. And that has the very standard outlines, the way a topic is traditionally presented. So usually I'll go to that first and look at how Bokor Rinpoche presents it, what's the standard outline, and then take the points from the FPMT module and combine those, and then modify the whole thing according to the way I think it should be presented. Sometimes there's some differences. So in the Lam Rim, then remember there's the 3 scopes. The Lam Rim, you might remember from the Lam Rim module long time ago, that there's the small scope, the middle scope, and the great scope. And they're divided up according to a person's, basically their motivation, their aspiration. What are they aiming to achieve? So remember, a person of the small scope, then their main aim is just to achieve a state of happiness beyond this life. So after death, in the future life, they want to be sure to take a good rebirth, right? So they want to know how to lead a wholesome life in this life to ensure that I don't fall into rebirth as an animal or in the hells or as a hungry ghost or some other unfortunate circumstance after death in next life. And then, so then there's the teachings for the small scope. So refuge is part of the topics of contemplation of the small scope. And then there's but just to review a little bit, so the medium scope then is the sort of contemplations and teachings given for a person whose main aim is not only to take a good rebirth, but beyond that, to eventually gain freedom from this whole cycle of dying and taking rebirth again and again, which is samsara, right? For someone who recognizes that wherever I take rebirth, samsara, it's still in the nature of suffering, no matter how pleasant it is. Eventually, the karma to enjoy that pleasant condition will run out, and I'll die and then take rebirth again. And there's no end to that as long as I don't identify the very root causes of samsara and eliminate those. Right? So remember, the whole module about emptiness was all about, emptiness. The reason we meditate on emptiness is because it is the antidote to the root cause of samsara, the ignorance grasping at an inherently existent I. So emptiness is part of the middle scope and the great scope as well. And then the great scope are the contemplations and sort of teachings for a person who recognizes that, well, it's not only me who's trapped in the oceans of samsaric suffering, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche likes to say, but it's all other sentient beings. My mother, my father, my friends, my family, all of the other human beings, animals, all the other sentient beings. They're just like me and being trapped in this endless kind of process of death and rebirth again and again. And just like me, they want to be, they would also like to have ultimate happiness. So it only makes, and all of my own, everything, that I enjoy, everything I cherish has all come about in dependence upon other sentient beings who have been infinitely kind to me. So for that reason, I should use my life to do whatever I can to benefit all sentient beings. And the best possible thing the best possible state or condition from which I can benefit all sentient beings is a state of full enlightenment. If I myself travel this path to abandon all false and negative qualities, abandon all ignorance, and perfect all of my positive qualities. Thereby, I can be of the greatest possible benefit to others. So, someone with that aspiration to benefit all sentient beings, then they especially focus on the practices of the great scope in addition to the other two. Okay, so in the Lam Rim, where does refuge come? It comes in the small scope. So the topics of the small scope again are, see if you can remember. Well, the first one actually is the first two are preliminary to the small scope are guru devotion and precious human rebirth. So relying on a spiritual friend, which we haven't covered yet, we'll cover a little later, and precious human rebirth, which we did cover earlier. And then the actual topics of the small scope are mainly four: impermanence in death, which I went through with you before, recognizing that even though we have a very fortunate circumstance now in which we're able to choose to, practice Dharma if we wish, that won't last forever. It's just like a small window of opportunity that will end when we die, and we don't know when that's going to happen. It could be any time. So we need to do, whatever we wish right now to make the most use of this opportunity to make our life very meaningful. We need to use that opportunity right now. So first topic is reflecting on impermanence and death. And then the second topic, which isn't really it isn't a separate module in Discovering Buddhism, is reflecting on the suffering of the lower realms, suffering of the hells, hungry ghosts, and animal realms, as a recognition of, well, what's the worst possible thing that could happen after I die? The reason we reflect on that, there are different reasons, but one is, just to recognize that, more than recognize, to assess whether that's a real possibility or not. For us, probably that's more the question. Is that really a possibility that I would take rebirth in like a hell realm? What would that mean? And is that actual possible? Why or why not? But if it did happen, like what would that be like? Or similar with rebirth as an animal or rebirth as a hungry ghost. And the reason for doing that, again, I kind of hesitate because I think many of us, because the way the hells are used, like in Christianity, as kind of like a big fear, like weapon, to instill fear, like if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell, and it's terrible. And, I think when people use things to scare us in a way that we feel is not justified, it generates resentment. We don't like to be addressed like that, or don't like people to kind of use that sort of rationale, because it's kind of demeaning in a way. Kind of underestimates our ability to think as a rational, mature human being. So when we talk about hells in Buddhism, it's not like that. Like this, we're talking about this in order to scare you. And honestly, Pabonka Rinpoche's Lam Rim, one thing I don't like so much about it is he does use the logic of fear. He's quite heavy on it, and that's because of the audience he's speaking to. Well, partly it's because of his own, worldview, the mentality that he's showing, the aspect of having, but largely it's because of the audience he's speaking to. He's speaking to this very conservative audience who they are all Buddhists. They all believe that 100%. So if he uses that, and honestly, probably they're not an audience of people with like a modern education like we have. We have to think that's 150 years ago, like in Tibet, right? It's a completely different rationality. It'd be like, like a Christian priest or preacher 200 years ago in America could be forgiven for using that, because that's just that was normal at that time, to use that kind of rationale. And the audience is expecting that sort of rationale. To them, it's not, doesn't seem anything wrong with it. So Pabonka Rinpoche, he's addressing a totally different audience than us. That doesn't mean we can't, we shouldn't read his text, and there's so much we can benefit from it. But we can do so with a little bit of just use a filter, right? Filter out the parts that don't seem so relevant to us. Like when you read His Holiness teachings about refuge, he doesn't use that kind of or the lower realm. I mean, His Holiness almost never talks about the suffering of the lower realms. Very rarely. Not that it's not important, but well, again, that relates to His Holiness kind of role as a public, like, world figure, something different. But it is important, I think. I mean, to me, it makes sense to think about the suffering of the lower realms, hell realms, and the possibility of taking rebirth there. I mean, it's something I found very powerful in my own, contemplation and practice, because it's like this. Like you all live in California, so you're quite close to the coast, and probably it happens. I mean, last time I was in Santa Cruz, just, I don't know, last year or sometime, you see there are these kind of new frames along the coast where you can take, like, the selfie spots, where someone can can stop and take a selfie with, like, a frame, and then some nice scene of the coast behind you. So people like to take selfies by the edge of the ocean. But in California, like, the edge of the ocean is quite dangerous in many places. There's cliffs that drop straight down into the ocean. And a lot of the edge of the cliffs are crumbling, right? So if you step too close to the edge of the cliff and then take a false step backwards, like, you could be dead. Like, in many places, you could be dead easily, like, in just a moment. So the suffering of, thinking about, after impermanence and death, the suffering of lower realms is kind of like that. Like, death is I mean, it's kind of like a cliff edge. I mean, if you have a lot of negative karma and then you die with a negative state of mind, such that that negative karma is activated. I mean, if you believe that there are future lives, right, and that what determines what kind of rebirth you take is karma, right? Which we've presented a lot of reasons. Well, I mean, we all know death is going to happen. We presented a lot of reasons why there actually are past and future lives already. So that's for each of us to analyze and decide what we think about them. And then we've presented a lot of reasons why, like, things, good experiences, pleasant experiences, and unpleasant experiences happen to us not just for no reason whatsoever, not totally chaotically, not by the power of an all powerful, like, creator God, and not for incongruent reasons, but because of very congruent or appropriate reasons. Because the golden rule, basically, when we act in a virtuous way, we act in a way that's not harmful to others and is beneficial to others, beneficial to ourselves, we create positive karma, and that results in pleasant experiences. When we act in a harmful way, a cruel way, a malevolent way, we create negative karma, and that results in unpleasant experiences for ourselves. So the same holds true of death. So if that's true, the karmic law of cause and effect, then if we create a lot of negative karma, then there's a danger that at the time of death, that karma ripens and throws us into a very unpleasant experience, right? So if that's the case, it's wise just to recognize that. Just like if you want to take a selfie by the ocean, it's wise to look first, like, where are you standing, and what's just, a meter away? Because if you don't, all those people who fall over cliffs, like, taking selfies or just, like, want to look over the edge, the reason they did that is because they didn't think carefully, like, what it entails to fall over that cliff. If they'd thought about that carefully, they would have a little fear, and that fear would cause them to stay a meter or two back from the edge, or just if they want to go to the edge, be very careful, like, how they do it, right? So it's that kind of wise fear, recognizing, oh, if I do this, that means that's going to happen. If that happens, that would be really bad, right? So that's the kind of logic that we use to look at the suffering of the lower realms. That's why we look at the suffering of the lower realms. Not because we're all supposed to be afraid, and in order to make us do something, we need to be made afraid. It's not that. It's because if there's a very real, I mean, according to Buddhist point of view, there's a very real possibility that after we die, if we take rebirth, we could take rebirth in a very bad situation. Of course, nobody wants that to happen. Nobody wants that to happen to anyone else. And that's why, just like no one wants anyone to fall over the edge of the cliff, that's why there are signs that, like, be careful, this is a cliff edge, don't fall over. The reason that this meditation on suffering of lower realms is like a signboard saying, like, be careful. If you do this and don't do this, like, this could happen. Like, don't go there. So okay, but this is all important and relevant to refuge, because refuge is the topic that comes right after contemplation on the suffering of the lower realms. Right? So there's impermanence and death, then suffering of the lower realms. And then, so when we contemplate deeply, like the suffering of the hells, hunger, ghosts, and animal realms, um, then naturally arises, a wish to be free from that. And then the question, well, how can I ensure that that doesn't happen to me, right? And then comes refuge. So that's where refuge comes in the Lam Rim, as as in response to the question, how can I ensure that I don't um, fall into rebirth in lower realms? But that's not the only. I mean, it's not that refuge is only relevant in that context. We might, I mean, for many of us, we might just have the question. Well, I mean, well, I'll come back to that. But in the Lam Rim, the traditional Lam Rim outlines, that's where refuge comes right after, um, contemplation on the rebirth in low realms, because the main cause for, we think about, well, why would we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha? There are many different reasons. So I'll come back to address all the different reasons. But the most, the reason most traditionally given, and in a way the most critical reason, well, actually, yeah, the most critical reason in the context of the small scope is that, we recognize that it's possible that we can, after we die, we fall into, this very heavy suffering state of rebirth, and we want to be free from that, right? So again, for this person who's their primary concern, and for many of us, probably this doesn't apply so much, but their primary concern is avoiding, is taking a good rebirth. Then for them, they take rebirth they take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in order to be protected from the suffering of lower realms. So that's one of the causes in the small scope. So then in the middle scope, the main, or for a person who's more attuned to that aspiration to be free from not only the suffering of lower realms, but the suffering of all of samsara, then they take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in order to achieve that. And then in the great scope, which is probably the mindset that fits, most of us most easily, most naturally, the wish to make our life meaningful and use our life to benefit all sentient beings. I mean, yeah. Fortunately, these days that's an attitude. The world is what, a village or something like that. That's an attitude that many is very mainstream. Many people in modern society, Western society, have this kind of this attitude, which is very wholesome. That I should use my life to benefit others as much as I can. So if we have that attitude, then we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in order to not only protect our own selves from the suffering of future lives, suffering in lower realms, from the suffering of samsara, but in order to protect all sentient beings from every form of suffering, then we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, right? So that's a much vaster reason, and one that probably, yeah, resonates more with many people. That I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in order to protect all sentient beings from every form of suffering, and also in order to bring about the most well-being, the most benefit, most happiness for myself and all other sentient beings. So maybe now I'll talk about my own little story of taking refuge. So I first took refuge in 1999 at Kopan Monastery with Lama Lundu, my first teacher. He led the refuge ceremony. But yeah, I was thinking about, well, because in thinking about, the reasons for going refuge that I just talked about, I was thinking, well, was that really the case for me? What were my reasons for going for refuge? Was it really because and for me, I don't think it wasn't because the suffering of the lower realms, it wasn't foremost in my mind, for sure. I think it was, and so why do people take refuge? Yeah, for me, it's more like, I don't know, wanting to make a commitment to a path and sort of recognizing that, no, this is the path that makes the most sense to me. And I feel like, and largely because of the idea of bodhicitta, I found the whole idea of bodhicitta, this, this aspiration to become fully enlightened, become, the best person you can possibly be over countless lifetimes. in order to benefit all sentient beings. Just this amazing, attitude, very, so vast, so powerful, so positive. And yeah, and just amazing. I never heard of that, that anything similar to having that kind of attitude in anywhere in Western philosophy or literature or anything else I'd come across, or even other forms of Buddhism, Zen Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism that I'd studied a little bit before that. I must have heard about it in Zen Buddhism a little bit, but it wasn't like so clearly and elaborately uh, explained as far as I remember. So I remember when I took before I took refuge very quickly. Like I'd learned about a little bit about Buddhism in college, and I meditated a little bit and then sort of forgot about it. But then when I wanted to learn more about meditation, I came to Thailand for like 3 months, and then got kind of bored with just watching my breath and watching movements of my body and stuff, and I didn't found much explanation to answer my questions about, well, what's the whole purpose of life. So someone suggested I come to check out Tibetan Buddhism. So that's why I ended up at Kopan. Actually, my mother had taken a course there before, some years prior, taking a 10-day course. So I'd heard of Kopan from her. So anyway, I went to Kopan. But then I took a 5-day course at a small center in Kathmandu nearby, because there was nothing happening at Kopan then. And I liked that a lot. Did a little 2-week retreat afterwards on my own. Just thinking about the Lamrim, going through the topics of the Lamrim and reflecting on those. And I found that very powerful. Yeah. And then, so then I took a 10-day course with Annie Karen, who's still, I think, still teaching at Kopan maybe now. She's been teaching, introductory courses there for like the last 40 years or something like that, like a long time. And she's an amazing teacher. So yeah, I took this 10-day introductory course with her. And then that's when I remember really being blown away by the idea of bodhicitta. The way Annie Karen presented it was just, yeah, very touching. She's Swedish, right? So her accent helps a little bit to I don't know, get a feeling for things. But she's also just so gentle and kind and sweet, and very, wholeheartedly believes everything she says, and very good at like leading meditations and leading prayers. And she has very beautiful voice and the way she chants and everything. It makes the whole experience like really, really, really sweet, really powerful as well. So I remember the way she presented bodhicitta, I just found really moving. And then also, hand in hand with bodhicitta, because bodhicitta is the aspiration to become fully enlightened. But you have to have an understanding of why it's possible to become fully enlightened, actually, to have that aspiration. So I also remember the way she presented the Buddha nature, which we've talked about, each of us, which relates to the potential of our mind. Why, looking at the nature of our mind, how the mind is naturally, its nature is not to be polluted by any disturbing emotions, but rather disturbing emotions are all extemporaneous contaminants of the pure nature of the mind. So because of that, it's possible to eliminate, separate out all the anger, attachment, ignorance, jealousy, selfishness, and all the stains of those, and have totally pure mind, which is completely filled with positive qualities: loving kindness, compassion, wisdom. And so, yeah, looking at those two combined, this recognition that, not only I, but every sentient being has this potential to have this fully developed state of enlightenment, the elimination of all faults, the perfection of all positive qualities, is really, it's just this, amazingly positive, perspective of oneself and others. And then combine that with this actual aspiration to, okay, well, I'm going to do whatever I can to actualize that. So those together, I found very powerful, and that's what I think. And then, emptiness, emptiness, I didn't really understand, but I was just kind of lost. Dependent arising, could understand. Emptiness was, a little off my head. So mainly those two together, the Buddha potential and bodhicitta. That's what really kind of, I don't know, sealed the deal for me. Like I felt like, no, this is totally like the path I want to be on. But then, I also did have fear because, I did that time. I believed in karma. I came to believe in karma, and I'd been a fisherman before. I went fishing in Alaska for like 3 summers, That's how I saved up money to go traveling in Asia. The last summer, I mean, I made a lot of money by killing a lot of fish. I was a professional fish killer for 3 months, and was my crew was like really good at it that last season, and lucky also. I mean, well, lucky in terms of fishermen, what fishermen consider lucky, right? In terms of Buddhism perspective, I don't know. I was maybe unlucky, but then if I hadn't been able to save that money, maybe I never would have made it to a Kopan. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But because I believed in karma and I just killed like hundreds of thousands of fish, then I was also afraid actually of taking rebirth in the lower realm. Um, so yeah, and also and also looking at my life before, been angry, like probably, and then gotten angry at my parents, many times, and done a lot of stupid things, right? As a kid, probably hurt a lot of people. Not that I was especially a bad person, but we all do foolish things when we're adolescents and stuff. So I had the recognition that I've created a lot of negative karma, and I was honestly afraid what would happen to me if I were to die just next month or something, what kind of rebirth I would take. So that was part of my thinking, but foremost in my own mind was more like recognizing that this is a really excellent path that really resonates with my own ideas and beliefs. And it's something that I think if I commit myself to this path, it'll be really helpful for me, helpful for others. And it's something, I think I want to do. So in that way, I think refuge is more like that, like determining for oneself that, this is really like the right path for me. And then seeing how by actually making kind of a formal commitment to that path, that really reinforces that for yourself. And then, because it becomes like kind of part of your identity. And so the practice of Buddhism, then it's not just like a hobby that I could, kind of take or leave whenever I feel like it, but it's more like this is an essential part of my life. So, it's a big commitment. I remember Annie Karen actually saying like, "Are you sure you want to do this? You're very new. You haven't been in this for very long. Like, this is a big step. It is a big step. It's a big commitment. It's kind of like a marriage, right, to a spiritual path." Um, um, but for me, it just things clicked very quickly and very naturally. So it was quite comfortable for me to take refuge at that time, and I haven't really had many doubts since. Little bit sometimes, but not serious doubts. But I've also been in a very different circumstance than many people. Like, since I took refuge, I've been living in Asia, right, in India, in Nepal, in this kind of Buddhist world. I remember after I took refuge, in the year after, I was really well, I was running out of money after like about a year after I took refuge. I've been living in India and paying for guest houses and courses and flight tickets and stuff. And I was running out of money, and I needed to find some way to keep going. So I needed money. And I was really afraid that if I go back to the West and kind of go back to work and living with whoever, friends, or that I would kind of lose my whole kind of enthusiasm and determination for this Buddhist path. I was quite nervous about that. And I knew, okay, well, I could go back and live at a Dharma center like at Land of Medicine Buddha or something, but then I'm not going to make any money, and I'm not going to be able to, ever come back to India. So, because as a working at a Dharma center, you don't make money, right? You don't save up anything. So yeah, anyway, I ended up going to Taiwan and working for a year. But which is in a Buddhist country like that, it's a lot easier to be a Buddhist, like to identify in that way, because many people support that. They're like, oh, that's great, that's wonderful. Um, and then I came back to India and Nepal, and then I became ordained soon after that. So yeah, I know. I saw with my sister. My sister also, she's Buddhist. She's taken refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha. But then she spent a year in India going to teachings and doing retreats. But then she went back to the U.S. and then she's a Chinese medicine practitioner. So she set up I interned with someone else for a while and set up her own practice. But I know, I know she finds it a little uncomfortable to identify as Buddhist. Because I think it's very different, I think, to identify Buddhist like in the United States versus like in India or Nepal or Taiwan or Singapore or something. Because in India, it's just such diverse religious culture, and Hinduism is standard, but Buddhism is considered like a little sister of Hinduism in India, so kind of is approval. But I think in the U.S., especially these days, I don't know. I know religion's kind of a little bit supercharged, sensitive topic. Like, with your relatives, you don't talk about politics and religion, right? Because you want everyone to get along. So I think she found, I mean, as a monk, like, okay, I identify as Buddhist, of course, but she found, I think, which maybe many people have that they're a little hesitant to identify with a religion because of all that might entail in other people's minds, right? For oneself so much. So, yeah, anyway, that's something we can talk about more about, but yeah, I think for some people, like the idea of taking refuge, that might be, I think that could be a detractor, kind of, or something that would cause hesitation as well. Then, everyone, because everyone's going to think I'm this like super religiously person, or I don't know what other people think all kind of things when we identify with any religion, right? So that can be a bit of a detractor, but yeah, and that's fair to keep in mind. But here my job is just to make clear, like from the Buddhist perspective, what it means to take refuge. So maybe I'll try to summarize, and then if we can, if there's any questions that you have, I can try to address those maybe before we meditate. Yeah, I was looking at the time. I will not watch it. I started at 7:30. It's almost been an hour. So, yeah, but the main thing I want to just make clear, kind of by sort of summary, but sort of bringing different things together, is okay. What is refuge in Buddhism? Right. So, what refuge is well, there's two causes, right? Yeah, basically two causes upon which we go for refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha. So the object of refuge, what refuge is to go to refuge for the Buddha Dharma Sangha. So that word refuge means to bridge something that protects us from something. Just like during a storm, if we're walking out in the countryside and we see like a big rainstorm coming, we need to seek a place to be protected from the wind and the rain and the lightning or whatever. So seeing a danger of some kind of harm befalling us, we seek out a place that will provide us with protection. So similarly, in Buddhism, it's what we call refuge. Like the Buddha Dharma Sangha, seeing the danger, of the harm that could befall us in samsara, the different forms of suffering that can befall us, in this life, in future lives, for ourselves, for others, then we seek out something that can protect us from that. So what is that something? And is the Buddha, the teacher, the Buddha who taught this path to freedom from suffering, taught, by teaching, accurately, what are the causes from which suffering arises. Then he can teach, and what are the ways by which we can stop eliminating those causes and create causes to not suffer, right? To have the opposite, happiness and well-being. So the teacher, the Buddha, and then what he taught, the Dharma, the kind of explanation that he gave of what are the causes of suffering, how to be free from that, and what are all the methods and techniques to be free from suffering and to have, all happiness from life to life up to enlightenment. So that body of teachings is the Dharma, right? And then the community of people who devote themselves to actualizing those teachings, right? To studying, practicing, upholding, and actually do generate realizations of those teachings in our mind, and then help others to be able to practice as a Sangha, right? So the Buddha is like, anyway, I won't go into that analogy now, but the Buddha is the teacher, and then the body of teachings is the Dharma, and that's what actually protects us, is our understanding and our our own practice of following, those instructions that the Buddha gave, is the Dharma. And then the spiritual community is the Sangha that helps us to be able to practice the teachings. But the two causes of going for refuge are this kind of recognition of the suffering of, if we take rebirth in the lower realms in future lives, or recognition of the suffering of all of samsara, and the wish to be free from that, or recognition of the suffering of all sentient beings and wishing to free all sentient beings from suffering. So basically, it's described as fear, right? I hate to use the word fear, but it's this kind of wise fear. So that's why I use the analogy of like standing by, the edge of a cliff. You should have a little fear. That kind of fear in recognition of what could actually happen, that protects you, right? So it's just with this wisdom, understanding like what are the kind of the worst possible things. What are all the different negative, unpleasant, suffering things that could happen to me in samsara? And how do I ensure that, I'm protected from those, that those don't happen to me? Just like when you see a rainstorm coming, if you're walking out in the wilderness, you recognize, well, if I don't find any cover, like I'm going to get drenched, I could get hypothermia, I could, a tree fall on me, I get struck by lightning or whatever, right? So you seek out protection. So there's this kind of wholesome fear or wise fear of what could happen to me, and then the faith based on reason, that understanding how the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha have the ability to protect us from that which we fear. So those are the two causes: the fear of the suffering that could happen, and reasoned faith, recognizing that the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha have the ability to protect me from those. So based on those two causes, then we, from the depths of our heart, we entrust ourselves. We turn for refuge. We sort of decide to follow or seek guidance from the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And so that's what refuge is, basically, based on these two causes. Recognition of negative, things that could happen, and faith that the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha has the ability to protect us from those. Then we, from the depths of our heart, kind of turn for, with a kind of trusting mind, turn for guidance and protection to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So here I want to just clarify one thing. When we go for refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, it doesn't mean that, kind of, again, like a creator God, that if we go for refuge to them, that they're going to just kind of hold their hand over us and make sure nothing bad happens to us. No, it's not all from their side. So there's this famous verse which I keep thinking in my mind again and again as I was preparing for this talk, where that says, the Buddha said, the Buddhas don't wash away sins with water. So they don't just purify us like, just like if someone has mud on them by like giving them a shower. The Buddhas don't pull us out of samsara like lifting a person up off the ground by the hand. Right? The Buddhas benefit sentient beings by teaching the Dharma. Right? So how does the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha protect us? It's not like we just go for refuge and then they do everything else. Rather, they teach us the causes. What are the causes of suffering, and how can you be free from that? And what are the causes of well-being and happiness? How can you create that? And then it's up to us to practice. That's all they can do, is explain. They realize by their own, the Buddha and the Sangha, they realize by their own experience, right? They've sought out this kind of path. Buddha discovered it, taught it to others. Other people realize it as well from generation to generation down to now. And then they can explain like what their experience is, but they can't give their experience to us or make us have that, and thereby they can't decide what happens to us. If the Buddha could protect us all from suffering, of course they would. None of us would suffer if they had that power. But karma is more powerful than the Buddha, right? Karma is the most powerful, which is just a natural law of cause and effect, right? So really what happens to us is really dependent upon what we do, how we act. And that's the end. So how did the Buddha Dharma, how does the Buddha protect us? By teaching. Right? How does the Dharma protect us? By being there, by being the truth. And then how are we protected? by actually modifying our behavior independent upon what the Buddha taught. So that's also an important distinction. Okay, so now I'll stop explaining. And if you have any questions, maybe I'll just take a few questions and then we'll do some meditation. Yes, Christine.
So you said that you went through a formal refuge ceremony, correct? So, but for the rest of us, we just decide that we're taking refuge and therefore we take refuge.
You can also have a formal refuge ceremony. But it's good to, well, yeah. I mean, actual refuge is just the mindset I was just describing, right? Where you just decide, but it is good to have that kind of clarified and formalized in a formal refuge ceremony. So that's something, like Geshe Ngawang Drakpa in San Francisco Center. I'm sure he gives refuge, if requested. Or other teachers in your area, I don't know so much, but like if Lama Zopa Rinpoche comes to visit, or another teacher comes to visit, like I myself, I'm not, I've never given refuge. Like I don't really feel comfortable taking that kind of role as like formal teacher. And also I haven't been authorized by my teachers to give refuge. So in FPMT, like there's only certain teachers who are sort of authorized to give refuge. But it's a typical role of like an abbot of a monastery. Like you could go to a Kopan monastery and take a course there and then take refuge with the abbot, or yeah, there's a different, I mean, His Holiness Dalai Lama, when he's actually, I don't know why Geshe Thupten Sherab's name just, okay, yeah, Geshe Thupten Sherab. Yeah, there's other Geshes in the US, Geshe Thupten Sherab, who give refuge. Okay, exactly. Yeah, His Holiness sometimes, usually, online gives refuge. So, but the refuge ceremony, it's good to take in a formalized way. And with His Holiness, when he gives it, usually it's, I mean, if it's online, it wouldn't feel very personal. It's good to find a good opportunity to do it. But
I see.
yeah.
It's really a mindset, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the main thing is the mind. Yeah, the mindset.
Okay. Thank
but
you.
it's something you don't just, not like you just do once. You can do again and again and again.
I see.
You can take refuge again. But usually the first time is sort of the most special, in a way, most important, in a way. The first time actually formalizing in a way. But it's a mindset that you decide for yourself. If you decide for yourself, like I'm taking refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, then it's done. I mean, that is it, right?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, sure. Other questions?
Geshe Sherab has come to Ocean of Compassion virtually a couple of times in the past year and offered refuge. Does a little teaching at first. And Geshe Dakpa also. If there's interest, then you let me know and I find somebody. And hopefully somebody you have a relationship with.
Yeah. Yeah, although when I took refuge with Lama Lundrup at Kopan, I didn't really have any relationship with him. He used to come to question and answer sessions during the intro courses. It's like just one or two times. But I mean, he's amazing practitioner. He's amazing Lama. So it was very, very powerful the way he gave the refuge ceremony. Okay, James, you have a question or a comment? Comments also welcome.
Great question. So I remember, I don't know if it's still going on, but there were like Sunday refuge meetings for addiction that I noticed, and I thought that was what the refuge was. Is that the same thing, taking refuge in the Buddha?
I'll let Mary Ellen answer. I think. I don't. Do you know about that, Mary? The meetings.
Ocean of Compassion allows a group to use our space for their meetings, and they're not affiliated with us, but Urs maybe knows more about them, but they use our space, but that's not the same. It's not the same thing. It's not really a Dharma group.
I thought that. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it's a different group. I mean, I think they're called now Dharma Recovery or Recovery Dharma or something like that. It's meant for people with, I guess, addiction problems, maybe recovering alcoholics or these kind of people who need a support group, and so they meet on Sunday nights. And so that's that.
Okay, so it's different. Okay, and then so I have like over the years have a higher power and have turned things over to that, and I've translated that it's essentially the Buddha, and in another form spiritually. Is that the same thing then as taking refuge in that higher power? From what you're describing, it sounds really similar. And
Yeah, it's really similar. I mean, I can't say it's the same thing because I can't like read your mind to know exactly
right.
what your sense of the higher power is. But I think that question, you keep it in mind, and as we go through the module and explain, and we look at more like because I mean this module largely is about, okay, well, what is the Buddha, right? What is the Dharma? What is the Sangha? Why are they considered a valid refuge? What does it mean to go for refuge to them? And then how does that relate to how we relate to other spiritual beings, other powerful kind of spiritual beings? So all those questions we'll talk about, and I think that'll probably help you kind of clarify for yourself if it's the same or not. Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we meditate for a bit? Say about 15 minutes or so. So, well, actually, why don't we take a little break? Let's take like a 5-minute break. Okay, and then we'll meditate. I think we'll do. I think you guys have been meditating quite a lot. I mean, through the course. So I don't think I'll give step-by-step instructions on what to meditate on. Just reflect on whatever you feel like you need to reflect on from the things presented, things we've discussed, or anything related to refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha. I mean, because we're all at very different places with refuge. Some have already taken refuge a long time ago, and maybe just want to think about the things related to their own practice refuge. Some are just totally brand new to the idea and have different doubts and questions to think about related to refuge. So yeah, so just take 15 minutes, and I mean, just to review what I spoke about was, well, all the reasons why, well, how refuge is within the three aspects of Buddhism: the philosophy, psychology, and religious. That's more related to the kind of religious aspect, although it has strong philosophical and underpinnings and psychological benefits that we'll come to later in the module more. But refuge is what distinguishes a person from being a Buddhist versus a non-Buddhist. Once you take refuge, then you're formally a Buddhist. So, and then how taking refuge is kind of, it becomes an integral part of your identification, your self-identification. And then what refuge, and then all the different hang-ups, how it's well, I guess how it's different refuge in, well, I think something I spoke a lot about is how refuge in Buddhism is different than kind of what do you say, refuge as it would be seen in like Christianity or monotheistic tradition. The idea is quite different. And then the causes for refuge, well, how it fits in the Lamrim, the small scope, and then how we can take refuge with a motivation from small scope, or middle scope, or great scope. And then especially the causes. What is refuge is the final thing, right? The causes, sort of wise fear of suffering, wanting and wish to be free from suffering, and then understanding, which is largely what we'll focus on the rest of the module, is understanding how the Buddha Dharma Sangha have the ability to protect us. So sort of faith, reasoned or informed faith in the Buddha Dharma Sangha's ability to protect us from suffering. And and based on those two causes, then single-pointedly or from the depths of our heart, then entrusting ourselves to the Buddha Dharma Sangha is what refuge is. Yeah, but the thing that actually protects us is our own understanding and practice of what the Buddha taught, the Dharma. So just that's what I mainly went over so far. So that or anything else that you want to reflect on related to refuge, then yeah, do so for the next maybe between 10 and 15 minutes. So bring your meditation to a conclusion in your own mind. Reflect on whatever you've thought about. Kind of come to some conclusion or summary of your contemplations. Okay. So let's break out into discussion groups now. I mean, if you remember, well, I'm not sure how many people are actually going to participate in discussion groups, so maybe we don't need to break out. But anyway, I just wanted to make a note because we did add this half hour of discussion group kind of later. So if some of you are too tired or feel like, yeah, it's too long, then you don't have to. It's a voluntary thing. You can peace out. Yeah. But so if there are, I don't know, 6 or more, then we'll have just two groups. Anyway, we'll see. I don't know, James, you have to go. You want to go?
Yeah, I'm in Chicago, and it's been a really long day. It's a couple hours ahead.
I bet.
So,
Yeah, it's great you can join.
yeah.
I hope your work there goes well. Anyway, let's see. Or maybe if anyone else is not going to join, can you just put your virtual hand up or something now? And we're not. So otherwise, we can just have a discussion group right here. Okay. All right, then let's make 2 groups. I don't know, who is it? Where's her Mary?
I'll drop off.
And then, so just before we go, one question I didn't prepare. You just go discuss whatever, I think when I make questions, people just discuss whatever anyway, most of the time. Yeah. Which is fine. But I came up with one question, which you might want to discuss, which is, like, because I was saying at the end, how do the Buddha Dharma protect us? It's by teaching the Dharma, right? So the Buddha protects us by teaching the Dharma. So, and that means basically teaching the law of cause and effect, right? So if we understand the law of cause and effect, and then we basically abandon the 10 non-virtuous actions, abandon actions that are harmful, then we're protected, right? And we practice the opposite, 10 virtuous actions, then we're protected from suffering. But to do that, to abandon the 10 non-virtuous actions like killing, stealing, lying, and practice their opposite, you don't have to take refuge to do that, right? So you don't actually have to take refuge to be protected from suffering. So then what's the point of going for refuge, right? Anyway, that's one kind of interesting question, I think. So let's break out to the discussion groups now for say 15 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So did how did your discussion groups go? Maybe can one person from each group give a little short synopsis of what you discussed?
Well, I felt like I was definitely the junior member of the group, since both Anne and Urs had already gone through refuge ceremonies and were talking about their Bodhisattva vows and other vows. And so for me, it was interesting just to see that there was this path of ritual and vow taking that I wasn't aware of. So that's what we talked about.
Cool. Yeah, that's one of the things I was thinking I need to mention soon is, yeah, refuge is kind of, yeah, as far as kind of like you said, rituals and vow taking, it's the entryway. And then based on having formally taken refuge, then you can take subsequent levels of vows and other teachings and things like that. So it is kind of an entryway like, for example, to become a monk or a nun, a Buddhist monk or nun, you have to take refuge first, and then qualified to take like monastic vows, for example. Anyway, the other group, what did you all discuss? And someone say, I'm not sure who was in the other group.
Jan or Venerable Palmer? Or Lakshmi?
I'll talk. We basically talked about the different levels of suffering and what you would want to know to avoid, and what you would want that any protection you had to help you do that would be worthwhile. And we did have some discussion of higher power, since that was brought up. And the difference is, like, could you think of, if you say higher power, does it automatically mean creator and in control of everything, rather than just say higher meaning above? Because in Western culture, when you say, you know, God has a higher power, that's what that means, where it doesn't necessarily have, you can say Buddha has a higher power than lay practitioners, which is true, but certainly not in the same way. So it's a matter of interpretation. So we talked a little bit about that. And I don't think we had many questions, so that was about it.
Okay. Yeah. Good. No need. You know, that sounds, I mean, those are quite complex questions. It sounds like you discussed the whole higher power issue. Yeah, after James mentioned that too, I was thinking during the break, I was thinking, yeah, that I was just the same actually. Before I formally took refuge in Buddhism, I kind of decided for myself, oh, I believe there is some kind of higher power of good. And I kind of do turn to that for guidance. Although I really had a craving for that to have a more like embodied form, a more like concrete form I could relate to more easily than this amorphous sense of like there's some force of good that I relate to. But I mean, fortunate for me, I think, is when I took refuge with Amalundra, I felt very much like, oh, I think this is, you know, has very much to do with that. Like this person, I mean, Lama Lunda made such a, I don't know, I connected with him so strongly that I felt like, oh, this person, I think that is kind of the answer to my prayer, that I find some more embodied sort of expression of that higher power that I sense exists. Yeah. So yeah, it is related, but it's a personal thing. Okay. Anyway, it sounds like you both had very fruitful discussion. So unless are there any other questions? Otherwise we'll just dedicate. Okay. Let's dedicate then. Yeah, so first let's rejoice in whatever merit we've created in this session together. So think about, you know, from your motivation, your virtuous motivation at the outset, and then all we've discussed, meditated on, heard about during this session. We can rejoice in our own efforts and the efforts of all the other participants. And then rejoice in all the merit and virtue created by all other sentient beings, ordinary beings like ourselves, from beginningless time till now. And then rejoice in all the merit and virtue created by all holy beings, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and other beings. In the past and the present. So then think all that great ocean of merits gathered together. Then we dedicate that, in short, all beings are free from every form of suffering. And bring to mind any specific individuals you know suffering, especially need prayers. We can especially remember Venerable Roger, the CEO of FPMT, personal attendant, who broke his hip recently and is recovering. May he have a quick recovery. But then countless other beings who are sick or afflicted in body or mind in different ways. And all of the beings suffering in different ways, may they quickly be free from different forms of suffering. So bring to mind anyone else you'd like to especially pray for. So may all your own prayers be fulfilled in accordance with your virtuous aspirations. And then may all beings have every form of peace and happiness and well-being up to full enlightenment. And for this purpose, may our own positive qualities develop and grow more and more. And may all authentic beneficial spiritual teachings, especially the Buddha Dharma, flourish and spread now and far into the future. And especially upholders of Buddhist teachings, as well as the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and countless other teachers, may they have long and stable lives. And the host of this session, this course, the Ocean of Compassion Buddhist Center, may it have all the necessary conditions, volunteers, sponsorship, and whatever other conditions required, enthusiastic students to be able to continue to offer courses like this now and far into the future. Thank you all for your participation, and I look forward to meeting again next week. Maybe I'll try to send out the Christine.
Oh, I was just saying thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I am. I'll try to send out sort of a division of the readings
That's
according to
helpful.
sessions soon. Yeah.
Okay.
Take care,
Thank you,
though.
Venerable.
Bye.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Venerable Lector.
Thank you, Venerable. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Anne.